There are 1,000 stories in the Envisioners' future. This is just one of them. Well, hello and welcome. How the devil are you? Dave Coppin here. It's another Wednesday evening. In fact, not only is it another Wednesday evening, it's actually the 26th Wednesday evening that we've been with you. 6 bloody months, eh? Who'd have thought when we started out it would be like this? So look, it has been 6 months. We've been every week, and so have you, and we really appreciate that. If you've been enjoying the journey, we'd love to get a subscription from you. I can see that the signal has completely hung, and so we're going to have to see what's going on there. Oh, look at that. The machine completely paused. That was because I'm getting all smug and saying we've been doing 6 months without a hitch. That's what you get when things like that go on. Another machine rebuild, I think. Anyway, with no further ado, we are talking about a number of great things tonight. Before we do, I've got some adverts for you. We've been busy. It's been busy a couple of weeks. The first thing we did is amazing. We were so lucky and so honoured to do this amazing kind of fireside chat with Terry Waite for a project that we were working on. And Terry was obviously talking about his experiences from back when he was held hostage, but really applying them to today's world. I got to ask him some questions about how he might apply what he'd learned in that horrible experience that he had about isolation and loneliness, and how that sort of forges part of the human spirit. Could we learn from that? And as we think about ourselves in lockdown, as we think about what our communities are going through in terms of the pandemic, what could we do as a result of that, and what could we learn? Amazing. I'll put the link on the thing below, but if you get a chance, you should absolutely look at that. And then also, I just wanted to point out last week's interview with David de Kramer. It's always a bit scary seeing yourself behind you. Hey, and David de Kramer, a really, really good book, really good long interview about much of the things that we're going to talk about now, which is the future of work in a world where we share the workplace with algorithms and robots. And that's kind of the subject for today. So I wanted to talk about brilliantly automation in the world of work. I wanted to talk about what is the potential for robots, be they software robots or hardware robots like these. And I was thinking about what's the best way to frame this for you guys in the audience? What's the best way to really help you engage with where I think we're at? And it reminded me of something from our past, which I thought you'd enjoy, but I think I can do no better job than this video to really frame where we're at.
I think Bob's got it. Bob! Yes, Bob? Have you got Bob's torque wrench? No, Bob, I haven't. Has Bob got it? No, Bob hasn't. Oh, hang on, no, Bob's got it. Bob! Yes, Bob? Oh, Bob's actually got the torque wrench. No, Bob! Oh, sorry, Bob. Bob's got it. Bob! Yes, Bob? No, not you, Bob. Bob! Bob, have you got Bob's torque wrench? No, Bob! Bob must have it. Bob! Oh, look, no, Bob, you said you had it down here. Bob, you had it yesterday. I'll lend it to Bob. Can you ask Bob further down?
The new BBL ambassador, hand-built by robots.
Absolutely love that. I can think of no better way to frame our future with robots. So this is all about automation. One of the things I'd love to start getting into is to hearing from you, the audience. And so my question for you this week is, what is the one part of your job that you would love to be able to automate, and why? Just answer that in the comments. If you're here live, answer that question right now in the comments, or if not, just type it into the comments below. We'd really, really love to hear from you. So with that, I'm going to bring in our old friend Gary. Gary, how the devil are you?
I'm good, Dave. Oh, there we go. Don't eat just before the podcast.
Yeah, no,
So,
always. You'll
I'm
be
good.
doing that a bit later on. You know, isn't it funny? It's my turn for the technical glitches this week. So, you know, that'll teach me to be so bloody smug last time you were on.
Oh, cheers, mate. Yeah, are you highlighting the fact that I may have had a technical glitch?
Once or twice. Look, we are talking about automation, and the reason we're talking about automation is because there are all these big numbers that everybody's throwing around, and these stupid headlines that even people like me will throw at you. You know, robots are going to take our jobs. The thing that I felt, one of the reports I really, really liked was the PwC report from about a year ago that did a really good job of laying out by gender, by industry, by region, the kind of impact automation would would have high level. What they're basically talking about is by 2035, 30% of the workforce will be automated. Now, the nuance, I think, is it's not 30% of the people, it's 30% of the jobs that they do. But the first bit of the conversation, Gary, I think would be really helpful is when we talk about automation, what do we actually mean? Is it robots on the production line, or is it something different than that?
Well, it can be, but in many cases we talk about robots and we think about a robot as a physical thing, whereas a robot can be a digital object. It can be a digital worker. So when we think about a robot, that can be a set of processors working with algorithms to be able to automate what we do. So a robot is simply, it could be hardware, but it could be software to be able to do something that we want to do. But it certainly doesn't have to be, a physical robot, but it can be. I mean, the thing is, the vast majority of robots, the biggest impact is not going to be the physical robot. That's really hard. It's really complex, and they're really, really expensive. Where the real value is likely to come in is in software robots. It's in being able to automate things that we do online, things that we do with computers. That's where the value is really going to come.
Yeah, absolutely. And let me just sort of see if I can cue this up, because it reminds me of a great joke that was from, who was it from? It was from Matt Ballantyne, sort of talked about this. And let me just put it on the screen. And it's this sort of concept that we think automation is this, right? So we, we'll talk about robots and jobs, and there'll be the headline, and there's always this and I've done it, as you've seen, sort of humanoid robot sort of looking pensively off into the middle distance. And the point is, that's not artificial intelligence, nor is it automation, because what really we're talking about when it comes to AI is this: it's an invisible force. It's the software. It's the sort of the ether. That's the thing that sits around us. This is the power of the automation that's going to be inside our businesses. And I think, once you start to talk to organizations and you start to help them get comfortable with the fact that, and I do AI probably a bit of a disservice here, but AI is about pattern recognition, right? It's looking for the regular repeated patterns, and it uses them to pull them together. And then you start analyzing what are the regular repeated patterns of what you do every day. And already we're getting some on the comments. So Tony's talking about the documentation that he creates is template based and repetitive. He quite like that. Jazz is talking about he'd love to be able to automate the journey to work. And equally coming back. And again, it's exactly the same every day, give or take some traffic. Tony's things, templates. I would guess probably about 30% of what any of us do is ticking boxes, filling in forms, answering in a standard way. It's that kind of stuff, which surely, the AI and machine learning should just eat for breakfast, right, Gary?
Traveling to work. I live in the Northwest. We don't do that.
Not anymore. You don't.
Not to travel. You Southerners and you Midlanders and you.
What are you up to up there, Jesus?
So I think one of the big problems with automation is we see it as a really. It's either going to have to be nothing or massively complex, hugely technical. It isn't. Automation can start really simply. Just being able to put in some simple rules in Outlook or in Google to be able to auto-respond is taking a step forward with automation. But that then scales up to be able to do hugely complex things, to automate services and responses and behaviors in call centers. And automation is anywhere between those. So, the thing, we often do, and we try to on the podcast, is really try to demystify it. So when you hear this, automation is steps of doing stuff. That's it. Yeah. It's a sequence of steps. And sometimes they go, if this, then this, if this, then this. But ultimately, it's a set of steps to do stuff. Now, that might be physically moving a pallet across a floor, done by a warehouse robot. But it also might be a call center robot, a digital worker, a digital robot, being able to answer customer questions, being able to pull information from half a dozen different systems and be able to present that to the user. So the automation is a whole range of things, but I think one of the things we want to get out today is to really demystify it. One of the things we always used to say was, when you talk about technology, you need to do it in a way that your mum can understand. And it's the same with automation. It's the same with AI. One of the best things I heard about AI was this. It's called AI until the point it becomes useful. Then it's whatever it does. It's not It's not Amazon recognition engine. It's just Amazon suggestions. You know,
Yeah,
at
love
the
that.
point it becomes useful, it's no longer AI. And that's what we need to do. Stop demystifying it, talk in language your mum can understand about what you want to do, and then focus on the output that you want. Again, we've said this so many times, at a human level. What is the benefit that you want to happen? So, and this is where automation, you know, you start to be able to take the steps through. So at the moment, when I call up, I have to log into 3 screens. I have to put in my details, you know, 3 times. I've got to go and find a password I can never remember. Okay, that's a starting point. Then what would you love it to be? I'd love it so I can log in once and it automatically logs me into the systems. This is how we start the automation journey. And then we can start to look at how do we start to make that happen. No, and you can learn yourself. You can work with specialists in this area. You can start to play around with it, which we love. We'd always recommend going and playing around with it. And then you can start on that automation journey. But it isn't this, I can only automate if I spend huge amounts of money and I'm an expert in this. That's not what it's about.
Yeah, I also, I mean, I love that, Gary, but I also think you've got to think about the boundary between the automation and the humans, right? Because the problem is we've been burned by this before. Do you remember those really crappy telephone booking systems that we still used to have in the cinema? We'd be like, you know, which cinema would you like to book? And we're like, Derby. You've said Doncaster. No, I quite clearly said Derby. Darlington. No. Do you know what I mean? So we've been burned by that. And then there's no way that you can hit the eject button and say, oh, look, I just want to talk to a human. Or do you know what I mean? So you've got to build those two things in, and you've got to find a way of blending the experience so that you get the best of both worlds, surely.
Yeah, so really quick one here. Having worked in some of these areas, if you get those systems, most of them are programmed that 0 takes you out of the system to an operator. So if you take nothing else from this half an hour, you get in an automated system, you can't get out, hit 0. So there we go. Don't say we're not useful. No, and I think you're right. But again, this is again going back to your mum and going, Mum, can you use this? I tried to book for Barnsley and it took me to Blackpool. Right, go back and we need to get that better. You know, and I think it's about being honest about this, isn't it? If it sucks, it sucks. It's not a subjective decision. If your mum says it's rubbish and the people you're using it say it's rubbish. And I think this is where we often get automation wrong. What we should be using automation for is to improve the quality of service, not to eliminate people. We've gone past that point.
See, that was where I was going to go.
It's wrong.
So you've taken me straight to the point I wanted to get to, which is, why do people think that they should automate? You know, surely it's a cost cutting. I mean, traditionally that's what we've done, right? It means that we no longer need those people on the call center or those people doing the repetitive stuff. That's got to be the reason, right?
Well, that's where a lot of the discussion started. And what we did was we focused on the elimination of people. We accepted inferior technology. So instead of calling up the call center and going, great, I'd like to book 2 tickets for me and my mum at Blackpool tonight at 7:00 to go and see Lord of the Rings, it became a 5-minute phone call and me having to, you know, press the buttons in for the, you know, it's painful. That's not what we want to be doing. We've moved on from this. And I think we've learned the lessons. We should be using automation to improve things, not to get rid of people. I mean, to be honest, if you're in a company, people are going to be under enough pressure. Don't add to the queues of people looking for jobs. Use this as an opportunity to improve your service, to take a step past the competition and then be better and hire people. It's the complete opposite, not about getting rid of people. Do a better service, grow your business and hire people.
Well, I think the whole thing about using it to cost cut is it's just like a race to the bottom. Do you know what I mean? You sort of, you get all of the humans, you automate what they do, you get rid of the humans, and then 6 to 12 months later, you're sitting around thinking, well, actually, given my competition's done that, and I now need to change the service or innovate, and I've got no one left to do that, you've got nowhere left to go. It's a bit like, for me, it's a lot like, do you remember the whole outsourcing phase that we went through? When would it have been? 10, 15 years ago. And let's, outsource to some call center somewhere, some other location, because it will be cheap. And then a few years later, the main strapline in them advertising is like UK-based call center. Well, why is that? Well, because the customer service was a bit shit. And it's just... this whole thing about, what is the outcome of what you're trying to deliver has to be at the core of it. I always think there's this principle of opportunity cost that really plays in with automation. And my sort of gut feel is that organizations in the future, they will be measured by what they chose to do with the savings of automation. So if arbitrarily I rock up and I save 30% of what you do, you will be measured by what you choose to do with that 30%. If you choose to, bank that savings, stick it in your back pocket, get rid of a load of people, I don't think you'll get measured very well. If, on the other hand, you use that 30% to think, well, what can we now do because we've got that capacity that the machines can't do, or we can do better than the machines, and really sort of knuckle in onto that. And that, to me, again, is where do you add the most value? That's the whole conversation about where can you have the most value. Surely that has to be the guiding light for people.
We don't have to look too far, because the attributes of success are slap bang in our face. And if you want to know what's important, look at which stocks have gone absolutely ballistic over the last few years. Netflix, Amazon, Apple. These companies are leading on service, they're leading on quality, they're leading on ease of use. And all of them have huge, extensive use of digital robots and digital workers behind the scenes to make things easy. So the whole point, this is like the duck. The duck's nice and smooth. Underneath, there's huge amounts of processes running. So it's constantly improving. It's constantly monitoring. And I think, if you look at the Amazon, it's a bit of an abstract, but Amazon has a huge market cap, huge valuation, but it's making a relatively very small amount of money. Why? It's continually putting the money into improving its service. Now, obviously, where we are today, you can see that that's limited. But years ago, Amazon, Bezos defended what he was doing because that's the only way to get better. We have to keep investing in the organization to get better. At some point, you're going to get to be the best. You then keep investing. You become a juggernaut that's near uncatchable.
Yeah.
And it applies to a very small organization as well. Lead with excellence, be the best. Because when you look at technology, the point about technology, it is available to everybody. So, if you put in the technology and stop, you're going to be copied, and then they'll come after you with price. You're going to end up be raced to the bottom with price. So continue to focus on making that experience better. That's what technology should do. Make things better for people. Simple as that.
Sorry, I haven't set the slide up, but this is what we talk about. I've got this thing that I call the Funboy 3 principle of digital transformation, because it ain't what you do, it's the way that you do it. Yeah, all right, in your own time. And it's the point that I think is at the heart of this, right? Which is, yeah, all right, thanks. If you focus on the customer journey and if you focus on the customer experience, and I mean that holistically rather than just was that particular interaction any good, were we able to get the customer what they needed? Were we able to delight the customer? That's the gift here, isn't it? That's the bit that you're trying to do. And that's the stuff that traditionally the machines are pretty rubbish at, right? And will be for the time being. That's the really tricky stuff. It's the unpredictable stuff. It's the emotional stuff. And that's what I think organizations really need to start to engage with. There's a whole bunch of backroom, engine that could easily be automated that frees you up to do the really important things. It's like, that case study, I think I've talked to you about this before, Gary. It's a hospital case study. It's from our time at Microsoft, although you find equivalent case studies from Google as well, talking about an oncologist who's using machine vision to identify brain tumors and reducing down the time from 5 hours per patient. So one consultant, 5 hours of looking at scans trying to identify a brain tumor, and the algorithm can do it in 30 minutes with greater accuracy than the human. But the joy for me about the story was not the fact that the machine was better than the human, but was in fact what the human chose to do with the 4.5 hours they've now got. Because she decided, well, actually, this is the point at which I'm about to tell another human being they have or haven't got brain cancer. So I think the value that I can add is probably going to be to spend more time with this patient rather than to process another 9 patients in the time that's saved. And it's that equation, it's that insight, it's that connection with the outcome for the patient, the customer, the client, whatever, that has to be, I think, the hallmark of the strategy for any organization who's looking to do something with automation. And I just sometimes, and maybe right now, look what's happening right now as a result of the pandemic is we've probably got a huge acceleration towards automation, and for a number of reasons, right? I think, there's a lot of cost pressures in people's business. There's a lot of areas where, robots, let's talk about robots, physical robots now rather than so much software. Physical robots exist to do the dangerous and dirty stuff that we don't want to put humans in front of. And so now we've got lots of people looking at how can we use robots to automate things like cleaning and all that sort of stuff. But within that, and as we come out of the pandemic, I think it's really beholden to us to really come back to that human side, because that's the bit that people want to engage with. Yeah, have an engine that sort of churns the stuff out. I still want to interact with a human being. That human interface, I think, will always be the most important interface for any business.
No, I agree. Let's take an issue with the call center. So a really bad experience. Let's compare the two and then look at how that's going to impact the satisfaction with the organization. The bad experience, you're waiting ages to get through. When you do get through, you're on buttons. If you do get through to a human, what's the worst experience you possibly get? Right. Okay, give me your details. Give me loads of details. Right. Okay, just hang on for 2 minutes while I pull your accounts up. What?
Yeah.
And then you metricked on, because I've waited, and that's completely unproductive. You metricked on getting me off the call as quick as possible. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you start to rethink this and go, okay, so when people call up, they're normally calling from their home phone, and we can match that, or their mobile, and we can match that to their account. So why don't we have those account details ready? And we're not spending 2 minutes. We're actually pulling all of that data. So as soon as that human's on the screen, it's there for them to see. And instead of that call waiting 2 minute wait and then a 1 minute on the call, get them off, we've solved the problem far quicker, and we've got time to have a rich human conversation. Because whilst you and I are quite happy to use technology, a lot of people do love the human experience. I've had a call with a fantastic call center. It's like, you finished. Okay, is there anything I can help you with? That's great service. Thanks. Get off the line. And it is for some people. The fact that you could ask them what the weather's about on a call center because you've created that time for the human interaction will send for those who track this, your NPS score, your customer satisfaction score through the roof. You've solved the problem, but you've shown yourself to be human. And I think, this is the mistake that we make, that we see automation as being a way to reduce the importance of the human, to replace them. It couldn't be further from the truth. The technology should be augmenting, adding to, enhancing the capabilities of what's possible.
Yeah,
and I think if we get that mindset shift, getting technology right and getting automation right becomes a lot easier.
No, exactly. And I want to sort of flip now to talk about skills, because I think there's two sides to the skills, right? So one is, with any big industrial sort of phase of innovation, industrial revolution, there's always a lag between the jobs that are displaced and then the new jobs that are created. And so you've got a window of time that you've got to traverse, but we've also got to think about what those skills are. And look, we already know what the skills are. We talk about them week after week on this bloody show. David DeCramer talked about them last week, which was about things like, critical thinking. It was creativity and curiosity and all the things that we always come together and talk about. And within that, it's where are we going to go with this? How do we help people bridge that? Here's my sort of top tip. Here's a great sort of here's a job title for you, right? Automation architect. What do you reckon? You're up for that? So this would be someone, if you've ever worked on a production line, this is sort of my mindset, you know incredibly more sort of intuitively what the machine's going to require, what would be the fastest way to do this, what would be the most efficient way of doing this. And what happens is you get another machine, and unless you're smart, you don't talk to the humans. You don't say, well, how could we do this better? So I would love to take all of the people whose roles are going to be automated, elevate them to a point where they can help us iron out the kinks, identify where the problems are, start to become that sort of holistic customer journey, service, user experience, employee experience, wherever you want to be, trying to pull that in. So there's the sort of the pivot, I think, that we've got to take the humans on.
Yeah, and and the same analogy in the physical world works in the digital world as well. We need people to improve the robots, because at the end of the day, we're going to have to make human and value judgments about what they want to do. The processor can typically give us information to guide us, but it's that human insight of making those judgments that's going to be key. That's not going to be automated.
Yeah.
You can automate. Let's look at healthcare. You can automate a lot of this. I don't want to get an email telling me I've got cancer.
Yeah.
I know it. I mean, we're joking about cancer. So,
But, yeah,
but
dear
this
Bert,
is
come
what
a
matters.
Gary.
Yeah. So, but actually, what does automation do? Automation frees the time so I can be in the doctor's
Yeah.
surgery. He's with me. He's looking at me, and not once does he have to get a call because he's got to go to his next call. He's got to cap me at 15 minutes or half an hour. And the same applies across a whole range of industries.
So what mindset then have organizations got to take? Because I think they've got to be proactive about this. Here's a great example. This was Aviva, and this was a few years ago. I'm going to say it might have been as long as 4 years ago. Who basically said to a bunch of people in the organization, right, your roles are all at risk because we're going to automate them. But put your hand up if you'd like to be retrained, and we will retrain you and we'll find you another role in the organization. Well, guess what happens? Do you know what I mean? Everyone's like, yeah, okay, it's inevitable that this is going to... And so it takes, I think, a really bold, a really proactive organization, a forward-thinking organization that says, right, what we do today is not what we're going to do tomorrow. So we need to move these people's skills from here to here, and we've got to take them all on the journey. Not everybody will come with you, but most, I think, if you sat and looked at this, and it goes back to the report we've talked about a couple of weeks ago that says, 80% of today's workforce will still be in the workforce in 2030, but we know that they're going to need fundamentally different skills. So, I'm going to be bold enough to say I think employers have a duty of care to help their employees transition from this old analog world to the new digital automated world. Do you think that's a step too far? Do you think that's not the capitalist way?
We covered this a few weeks ago, didn't we? And I was just trying to think of the subject. How do you get remote working right? You speak to people, you do it with them. This is no different. Engage people. Just be honest. We are being challenged in the market. We need to improve our productivity. Anyone goes, productivity? That's job cuts, isn't it? Yeah, productivity. I know what you mean there, mate. And we don't. Let's have this debate and go, we need to become more efficient. You 10, 50, 5,000 people in the organization, you know what our customers want because you're serving them. You know how efficient our sales process is because you need to fill the forms in and it takes you 3 days. Help us understand where those things are and then be rewarded for driving those improvements. And we won't fire you. Why? Because we're going to save money by doing this and we can redeploy you. And if we're better, we'll win more business. So, take away the productivity means job cuts and make it productivity means your job is more secure. And it's going to be a bold person to do that. If you want to see an automation, initiative cock up, as the same with any technology, do it to people. And particularly do it against them. See what happens then. Yeah. And it's not necessary. If you want to make, you find a lot of organizations are actually dealing, there's another couple of angles here that we should make people aware of, which is a lot of organizations are at the point where they have a lot of information and intelligence and insight in the heads of people who are going to be retiring soon. This is a great opportunity to automate, because if you don't, those people are going to leave. That information is going to be gone. So in some cases, you can have a few years before the guy who built that system is going to be gone. He's not going to be taking your calls on the golf course. He really isn't. And if he's been working on this 30-year-old programming system and John in accounts is keeping it running, you don't want to replace it.
Yeah.
But you're not going to easily find another John. Good luck getting a 20-year-old who wants to learn a 40-year-old language and have that around his neck. So look, engage John. Explain what you want to do. We want to automate this. Why? So we can continue. You're still going to be the expert man until you go. But when you've gone, we still want to have this service until it's the right time for us to replace this. And there's a lot of things that can be done like that. So it all starts with an honest, open conversation. What a pair of hippies we are, Dave.
Who would have thought, hey? We were always bloody hippies, Gary. That's the thing. So look, I love that. And I'm going to start to wrap it up now because we're at time. So number one, actually, what you said is really, really important about productivity. So productivity, I think, will be our downfall in this unless we redefine it. I think our sort of old industrial revolution definition of productivity, input divided by input, causes us to fixate on efficiency and process rather than how do we change the outcome, what else could we do? So unless we redefine productivity, I think we'll struggle to measure our progress down this. But the most important thing in what you've said and what the whole conversation, and isn't it funny how it's exactly the same answer for everything we've been talking about, is human first. Right? It's just really simple. And whether it's engaging people in the debate or whether it's thinking about our customers as human beings, rather than targets or numbers or whatever they might be, that has to be the approach that will open up the opportunity for automation. The final thing in what you said, Gary, I loved about it was go and find out. There are all of these companies who sell solutions to automate things, all have online presence. They all have tools you can use. They all have online learning that you can, mess around with and see what is actually possible. None of this is rocket science. It really isn't. So engage with it, understand it, learn it. And if you bring the humans in, if you take them on the journey and you focus on what you're going to do with the saving, that's the best way through this. And I think that's not a bad place to leave it. What do you reckon, Gary?
I think it's good. So I didn't mention my company, and if I probably go through this, then I'll have the marketing people, if they ever see this, they'll be all over me. So I'll give you an example. We've got competitors in the market. I work for a company called Blue Prism. We make digital workers. We help you automate. If you want to learn about this, go onto the website, download the software for free, go and take the training for free, sign up and do all the university courses we do for free. You can certify an expert in this, and it's not going to cost you anything. You want to be the expert, go and do it. There's nothing holding you back. You can run this stuff on your home computer. You don't need to be on some massive mega farm. If you want to learn about this, you want to understand and go, Gary, this automation thing, it you know what? It might have legs. I think there's something I could do. So download it, spend a few hours in the evening and become the person in your organization who can do it. There's no reason why Sally from accounts can't become the automation expert.
No, exactly. I love that, Gary. Listen, we're going to leave it there, Gary. So thanks so much for joining us. And we'll be back again with you next week. Always good to hear from you, Gary. And thank to you for joining us. Jazz, we didn't figure out a way of automating your journey to and from work, but maybe we'll get to that in another show. I just want to say, hopefully the video will run this time. Yeah, it looks like it is. Give us a subscribe if you haven't already, or a like if you enjoyed the show. And if you haven't enjoyed the show, tell us what you'd like to hear. We'd certainly love to hear the answer to your question. What would you like to automate and why? And other than that, it's been fantastic to have you along for our 6-month edition of the show. We'll saw you again next week. Thanks for joining us. All right, take care now.
There are 1,000 stories in the Envisioners' future. This is just one of them.